everyone. Welcome back to the Broncos Podcast Network and YouTube for the latest episode of Broncos Now. As always, I'm your host, Sydney Jones. And coming up on today's episode, the Broncos were back at practice today as they look ahead to their next road trip in Los Angeles. We'll hear from head coach Sean Payton, quarterback Russell Wilson, and safety Justin Simmons. All that and more coming up. The Broncos look to turn the page as they return to practice today here at Centura Health Training Center and look ahead to their road trip to Los Angeles. Head coach Sean Payton spoke today about what the keys are to playing well on the road against a division opponent.
The reason sometimes the division is more important is because your first goal is to win the division, and by winning a division game, you actually cause a division opponent to lose. But I think relative to going on the road, I think the itinerary is pretty clean. It's not a long travel itinerary, and the focus is really just on the prep leading up to the week. Everything we're doing today, the attention to detail, making sure we know this team, this opponent well, all those things matter.
Looking at the matchup versus the Chargers, head coach Sean Payton talked about Khalil Mack and what stands out to him defensively.
These guys are third overall as a team in sacks. The thing that jumps out at you I would say defensively with some things, they're playing really good third down defense. They're third best in the NFL. They're at the top of the league in sacks, hurries, and pressures. Over the years, consistently, he's just been, one of those players. His coach in college I know really well. I worked for Lou Tepper, and Lou raved about him way back when he came out, and he's got great technique. He's strong. He plays with good energy, effort. I mean, he's special.
And as the Broncos look to get back on track in Los Angeles this Sunday, safety Justin Simmons spoke today on how they'll look to reset.
Yeah, I don't think it's difficult, and I think for our group, we don't need to look at it as being difficult to reset. I think just as easy as it was to go on a 5-game streak, you need to be able to have that, like I said, that same confidence moving forward and, week in and week out. I mean, it's the NFL. You're not going to win them all. You're going to lose close games. The fact of the matter is we were, as poorly as we played at times, we were 8 yards away from winning that football game and then, sitting here talking about another win. So, football is a game of inches, and, those 4 or 5 plays that I talk about that win or lose you the game, we just didn't find ways to make those plays, but we should be confident. We have a really good Chargers team. Obviously, we're going to go play in LA, and offensively they do a lot of things really well. Obviously, Justin leading the pack there at quarterback, and so we're going to have to be way better than we were last week in order to give ourselves a chance to win. And obviously, takeaways are going to be at the utmost importance.
And going off of that, quarterback Russell Wilson and head coach Sean Payton spoke today about playing in meaningful games and learning how to win in these high-stakes situations.
Well, if you want to be the best, you got to, one, beat the best. I think, two, when it gets to, when you get to the playoffs, it's always a, one and done. So, I mean, every game should always be that mentality anyway, just that every game matters. I think that's just that's the mentality. You should always have that sense of urgency, a sense of urgency for our fans, a sense of urgency for us as players, as organization. We have that sense of urgency. We have got a lot of great confidence too, and I think I love the tough moments. I love the adversity. I love the opportunity. Like I said to you guys last week, I think challenges and obstacles are just a beautiful time to have great opportunity to overcome it and be successful. So. We're not going to blink. We're not going to flinch.
I just finished talking about this. When I first got into coaching, a lot of times teams would divide the season into quarters because it was 16 weeks. Now it's 17, but we are in that last quarter pole. And there's a lot of teams that are kind of sitting where we are. And so this stretch is going to be important, and it's pretty obvious.
Plus, both Russell Wilson and Justin Simmons talked about communication and how they hope to improve that in each of their respective units this Sunday.
I think anytime you play on the road, it's a little bit more challenging just in general. So I think going on the road this week, communication is really important. Everybody getting the signals, all the little stuff. I think we've done a good job. I think there's always, 1 or 2 plays in there that we can be a little bit crisper on and this and that. But like I said, I think that we want to be able to play clean ball. How we do that, first of all, first down, second down got to be great. Third down, we got to convert. When we get in the red zone, we got to be deadly down there. We got to be able to strike every time we touch the ball down there, and that's the difference. I mean, I think that we're right. If I was able to say that, hey, we're where we are. Yeah, we want to be further ahead than where we are right now, but I also believe in where we are too, and what we can do, and that's a good feeling to know that we got guys that are ready to work and ready to win, and so we're excited about the opportunity and the challenge, and really, making a difference one game at a time.
The biggest thing was communication, and I know, surpriser. I always say that, but I think that was evident. I think those two bombs, kind of like early on in the game, were miscommunication things, and then there were some things that hats off to Houston that did really well schematically, and they have talent. Like I said earlier in the week when we were prepping to get ready to play for them all across the board, and we knew they were a good team, but there's definitely some things that hurt ourselves. So for us this week, getting ready to go to LA, you got to take those mistakes out of the game in order to give yourself a chance. I mean, the fact is we lost by 4 points, and there were some field goals and even a touchdown that we kind of left on the field. And like I said, those are the differences between the game. That's what I look at. I don't look at any of the offensive stuff or the special team stuff. I just look at when the defense is asked to go out on the field, did we win, did we lose? And we didn't win as much as we should have. And so we're going to have to be better this week against a really good offense.
And last but not least, tackle Garrett Bowles spoke today on being the Broncos nominee for the Walter Payton Man of the Year award.
Just want to say thank you. It's a great honor to receive this award from a great organization. I'm just beyond grateful and humbled. I have a phenomenal support team that's behind me that has helped me along the way and has put me in, this community, our community support team from Allie to Olivia to Liz and everyone else that's part of that team here at the Broncos, of just putting me in the right place, through my injury and, just trying to find a way to serve people. My mom always taught me is to love God and love people. So, I've just taken that upon myself and has really applied it in this community. And I'm just very grateful that I got to reach as many children as I can and to use my voice and my platform to be able to help those kids that are in need so close to home.
And now it's time to take a look at today's injury report. Defensive end Zach Allen, tackle Mike McGlinchey, wide receiver Marvin Mims Jr., safety Delarian Turner-Yell, and cornerback Pat Surtain were all limited at today's practice. While outside linebacker Baron Browning and running back Samaje Perine were all full participants. Now joining me on today's episode of Broncos Now to take a more in-depth look at today's news is fellow team reporter Phil Milani. Phil, thanks for joining the show today.
Thank you. Our Wednesday routine.
I know. I love it.
I do too.
Phil, we got another AFC West showdown coming up on the horizon here. First time we're seeing the Chargers this year.
Yeah, they've kind of been a team that's like gone through some ups and downs. You know?
They have.
They've lost a lot of really close games, but coming into the season, I think they had a lot of expectations that they were going to make a push for a Super Bowl run or something like that. And
after making the playoffs last year,
exactly. But things haven't exactly gone according to plan for them. So I think that they're a lot better team than their record shows.
Definitely.
So, this is going to be a good test for the Broncos. And, normally they say like these division games count twice. Right. Sean Payton was asked a little bit about that on Wednesday. And he was like, yeah, normally you kind of say that just because it's a win for you and it's a loss for a division opponent. But the position the Broncos are in right now, they sort of need to win all of these games.
Definitely.
Justin Simmons called it a must-win game. So division opponent or not, all of these final 5 games are going to be important for the Broncos.
Yeah, for sure, especially with how the AFC playoff picture is kind of shaked out right now. So there's a big lump in the middle there.
Yeah, everything is like so jam-packed right there.
Yeah.
Like
a lot of 6 and 6.
Yeah, 7 and 5, 6 and 6. Like they're all right there. So even a couple of teams like the Chargers, a game back from the Broncos.
Right,
so.
they're only one game behind.
Yeah.
For sure. Yeah, Phil, a lot of guys today talked about just the mindset of getting back on track. And I know safety Justin Simmons, we heard from him early in the show talking about it, and he said, it's not difficult for this team to reset out there.
Yeah, I think that it was just one game, and he kind of said, like, look, all these games in the NFL are so difficult every single week.
Right.
They went on the road and faced a pretty good Houston team, and the Broncos did a lot of things to beat themselves in that one. So I think the mindset for this team overall is like, hey, if we can just get those things corrected, play a little bit cleaner football, you can get on a new streak here moving forward. So I think that's sort of the mindset. I don't think that a loss to Houston like has affected this team's confidence or like they still know what they're capable of. But I do think that they're aware of like the pressure that's on now. There's like really not that much room for error. When you think of like the playoffs every year, you sort of think of 10 as that sort of like magic number where you get to 10, you got a really, really good chance to make the playoffs.
Right.
And where this team stands right now, that just means their margin of error is like really slim.
Really slim. Yeah. Phil, I know there's been a lot of talk this week just about communication and kind of the lack of it on Sunday in Houston for both the offense and the defense. So, how do you expect to see them improve on that? And, what are the keys to kind of fixing that during the week?
I think just focusing on the details, like during practice, I think that those are the big things. You saw just a little bit of that, like creep in, especially late in that game.
Right.
And the other thing I think, and nobody's really said this, but it's just sort of how I feel is like when you don't convert a lot of third downs, it's really hard to get into like a flow and a rhythm as an offense. And so I think even at that point in the game, late in the fourth quarter there, the Broncos just hadn't really gone into like a rhythm.
Yeah.
So like I think it affected them in terms of just like operations wise. Like it was like so much of the game plan kind of goes out the window. Sean Payton said that a lot when you just don't get a lot of plays. And so I think if you're able to just stay on the field a little bit more, you get more comfortable, you get into a rhythm, a flow of the game, and therefore your communication just naturally sort of gets in sync with you as an offense, and everything just sort of hums along better.
Definitely.
And I think the fact that the Broncos were 0 of 11 on third down, that affects everything, including communication. So I think that's one thing. And then just making sure you focus on details during the week. So much of that winning streak, we heard a lot about how practice was intense and everybody was really sharp and focused during practice. I think that carries over to game day. So just being a little bit more attention to detail, sort of focus during the week, I think that'll translate to the field on game day, because you're right, Sid, there's been a lot of talk about that final play. On Monday this week, Sean Payton said, hey, there was supposed to be a shift.
Right.
That never happened. There was a free rusher on Russ. He had to avoid that. And then after that, it was sort of just street ball, as Sean Payton said, and he called the play chaos. So I think that all of those things can get corrected during the week.
Definitely. Phil, looking at the matchup specifically, I know head coach Sean Payton, he talked about Khalil Mack and the Chargers defense. So, what specifically outside of that kind of sticks out to you from this Chargers defense, and how do you think our offense will fare going up against them?
Well, I do think that a couple of weeks ago, the Broncos paid a lot of attention to Myles Garrett.
Yeah.
At that point in the year, he had been leading the league in sacks and was sort of this game record type of person.
Right.
And they did a really good job against him. Last week against Will Anderson, not as much, he really affected the game. And, he's an outstanding young player for the Texans. So I do think that, talking to this offensive line, they know that they can be better than how they played last week. And so I expect them to really respond to this challenge this week. And Khalil Mack is sort of a nightmare type of player.
Yes.
I mean, he had 6 sacks in one game this season.
It's insane.
And for him, I think he's in his 10th season in the league. For him to be able to play at that level at this junction of his career is really a testament to, what he must be doing in the off season and the way he's getting his body right. I mean, he is a game wrecker, Sid. And Broncos fans are very familiar with him, obviously, all those years with the Raiders. One game in 2015, he had 5 sacks against Brock Osweiler in Denver here. So, he's more than capable of getting on one of these hot streaks and then just making it a long day,
Right.
And so maybe he's not as consistent of a pass rusher as some of these other guys, who have 1 or 2 sacks every single game. He's that guy who can really get hot and really impact a game. And even the last couple of weeks, he's been doing that. He's had 2 sacks in each game the last couple of weeks here. So he is really in a rhythm here, and he's got a good shot at setting the Chargers franchise record for the most sacks in a season. He's got 15 now. 17 is their record, Sean Merriman. So
still 5 weeks left.
Yeah, exactly. So he's got a good shot to break that record.
Yeah, and then Phil, on offense for the Chargers, they've been inconsistent a bit this season. They only put up 6 points versus the Patriots last week, but never really want to underestimate Justin Herbert and Keenan Allen over there.
I think that what Justin Herbert is capable of.
Yeah.
But you sort of feel for for Herbert because he's on his third offensive coordinator in 4 seasons.
Yeah, good
so
point.
really hard to see a consistency in your growth, when that happens.
Right.
Justin Herbert was the first player in NFL history to have 30-plus touchdowns in each of his first 2 seasons. The last last season, and he's on pace this year to be short of 30. So the Broncos obviously are familiar with Justin Herbert because Joe Lombardi was there for the last 2 years. So there's some insight there. Sean Payton talked about, hey, maybe you ask Joe. He's in some of these meetings, but really it's the tape that you're watching to get an idea. But, he hasn't had that production this season. 6 points, I think, is the fewest points that a team has won a game in the NFL since 2018.
Wow.
So it's been like 5 years,
Right. 6-0.
Yeah, you don't see that often where you win the game. So the production hasn't been there, but that he's capable of just really taking his game to that level.
Right.
So
and plays well against the Broncos typically.
Yeah, that's true. Although Pat had those 2 picks a couple years ago. So
hoping to see more of those.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So he's going to be a big test. And Keenan Allen is such a pro. He's been in the league so long. Anytime you go against a guy like that, they just sort of know how to get open.
Definitely.
Justin Simmons mentioned that, just kind of compared him a little to Travis Kelce, saying like he just knows what the defense is trying to do and can change what he's trying to do, accordingly. So I don't want to say crafty, but he's just a good player. I mean, he's just a solid wide receiver. So those two are tough. And then obviously there's a hometown kid, Austin Eckler, the Colorado guy. So he's going to be a challenge too. Although offensively, they just haven't had the production this year for whatever reason, but they're more than capable of lighting it up.
Yeah. And Phil, last week in Houston, there was a ton of Broncos fans.
Oh, yeah.
And I think there's going to be a lot this weekend in LA as well. Typically in years past, there's been a lot of Broncos
the Chargers
fans in LA.
games. Yeah, exactly.
So excited to see that.
The Chargers have certainly had this issue of, despite being really good, having their footing there in LA.
In LA.
And the Rams win the Super Bowl, so like right off the bat, that's there. And so there's a little bit of a challenge there for them. Not having a home, I think, for a little bit was a challenge too. So, but there are a lot of Broncos fans in Southern California.
There are, yeah.
In general, you heard, Justin talking about that. Hey, when these guys travel, Sean Payton talked about it. It makes a big impact. So, in years past, it's been like loud when the Chargers have the ball. I remember a couple times Phillip Rivers had to go the silent count at home. So, anytime your away crowd can help the Broncos like that, it's a good thing.
Yeah, you love to see it.
It's awesome.
Yeah. Well, Phil, looking forward to it. Got a few more days of practice here before the team heads out to LA, but it should be a fun one.
Got to lock in, Sid. It's go time.
It is go time. Phil, appreciate you joining the show.
Thank you.
Well, that's going to do it for today's episode of Broncos Now. Broncos Country, thanks so much for tuning in. I'll meet you right back here on the Broncos Podcast Network and YouTube tomorrow for another episode. I'll see you all then.